Hey, what's up, guys? Note Investor here. Took a few days off during the holiday, didn't record any videos, hardly did any trading over the weekend, and here at the start of the week, just kind of watching BTC, watching this price action. While Bitcoin technically remains in an uptrend, we are seeing some notable lagging in most of the altcoins, and so I'll discuss that a little bit. We'll take a look at the charts here, some quick updates on the price action, what I'm thinking here going forward, some things to be watching out for into this week and as we head into next week over the weekend. And so first things first, let's take a look at the coin market cap, because that's really what I want to talk about here today. Notice this is the BTC dominance percentage versus some of the other coins, and you can see that at the end of March, we were seeing Bitcoin dominance test that 50% level, and it was dropping here as some of the other alt categories were rising. A lot of the mid cap and small cap names had some very nice rallies in February and March. And then in April, we saw, of course, the big breakout in Bitcoin. And since then, the BTC dominance has been steadily rising and is approaching that 55% level here yesterday, as most of the big cap names continue to lag significantly versus Bitcoin. We'll take a look at some of those charts here shortly, but Bitcoin Cash, Ripple, Ethereum, right, just kind of pulling back versus BTC, not participating in this latest leg up. And to be fair, many of these alts had monster moves here in Q1, and it's just normal to see them take a breather, do some consolidation, but you're seeing them just really start to drop off sharply here in the last couple of days. We're getting some bounce action as things are hitting oversold conditions. So where do we go from here, right? And that's the big question is, are the alts just taking a breather, and when Bitcoin looks like it's going to put in a little bit of a top, do we see some rotation to some of those names that are lagging? Or are the alts an early indicator that are potentially signaling this broader move that we've seen over the last several weeks, several months, perhaps is coming to a close, and maybe we're going to see some more downside action? So those are some of the thoughts right now. Taking a look at the charts here, we'll start with Bitcoin first. Looking at the daily chart, it's always important to make note of the big picture view, and there's a couple of things that I want to point out here. Highlighted here is this minor resistance zone that has kind of really been the first targets on the way up, and that's really between that 5,400 level up to around 5,600. Here a couple days back, we saw a quick spike into 5,600, which was short-lived. Very quickly saw the selling. We'll zoom in here and look at the shorter time frames, but then we've still held above this 10 EMA, and so that's important to note that technically prices is still in an uptrend. If we zoom in here for you guys, you can see this blue line on my chart is the 10-period exponential moving average on this daily time frame, and until prices begin to turn the corner and start closing below that, you got to give it the benefit of the doubt. Certainly there are some warning flags starting to show up, but as we head into this price resistance, you are seeing some bearish divergences showing up here. Before I look at those, the next thing to note is on the way up, if prices can continue to just push through here, then the next big target is approaching that 6K psychological number, and really anywhere in between there. Could you see some front running? Could you see some selling before prices hit that? Absolutely, right? You can see people kind of starting to take profits into that move, or even as high as 6,200. So that little window is really the next two big targets, 6,000 psychological, and then of course 6,300, which was that start of the big drop in November. The top of that candle that kicked off the big selling on November 14th is 6,300, which is why I have that highlighted as kind of that next major resistance level to be watching above 6K. And so those are really the two big targets on the upside. Anything in between that, it's a little bit of a vacuum, so certainly we can see selling show up well before that, but those are really the next areas to be watching if it can clear this little bit of minor resistance that prices have really just been pausing at here over the last couple of weeks, as we had that big breakout over 5,400 or 4,200, excuse me, and prices went right up to that 5,500, pulled back, and then we saw a new fresh high here a few days ago. Now, on that new relative high that we've seen, many of you have already started to point this out. There is a bearish divergence showing up, and that is absolutely valid. And let me clear this blue line here. What I mean by that is, as prices have made a new relative high, you can see here that the RSI certainly has not confirmed that to the upside. And while this is never a sell signal in and of itself, it is a little bit of a warning flag that is starting to signify, hey, maybe the buying momentum is starting to wane. maybe the buyers aren't as strong as they were on that first go on the upside. And that makes sense, right? I mean, certainly from a risk reward perspective, if I'm trading or taking some positions here at this level, certainly much higher risk than if I was doing it, down here at the mid 4,000 range. So that's something to make note of. You're also seeing that show up on the MACD histogram here. You're seeing that hasn't even been able to tick into the green. I think it will. It'll probably barely tick into the green before starting to roll back over into the red. So ultimately, it's going to depend on where price finally puts in that high. It might have already, right? We might have seen that price high 3 days ago at 56.50, but that's not confirmed yet until prices can really break below the low of that day. For the last 2 days, pretty much just inside bars. If we zoom in here on the 1 hour view, though, we get a little bit of a different view. And so let me hide these here, delete this for us. And so what I want to make note of is this big price spike we saw as prices pushed right over 5,600, quickly pulled right back close to 5,500. We saw an attempt again, made a little bit of a double top, really just finding this resistance level here at 56.20 or so. And then a pretty sharp sell-off here yesterday, which did find some support around 5,400. And now we're bouncing here a little bit. So that's really, we're kind of just chopping in this range right now. And there's not a real clear direction. Again, the big picture view, I'm starting to hesitate a little bit. I did raise some cash. I took some initial short positions here just to start hedging a little bit because I am a little bit more cautious here as prices have seen a pretty good run up and are looking like they're stalling out here. Now, certainly if it gets above this level, then clearly I was wrong on that, and I will, close those hedges out and just wait for clear direction. At that point, what I'll be looking for is the big picture, the time frame, the daily chart to really confirm that it's turned. Look for a solid break below those moving averages, wait for a bounce, and then at that point, I may start shorting again. So right now, just watching this, like I said, I have taken some chips off the table, if you will. And again, this is trading account. This is not my long-term holds, but certainly just getting a lot more cautious here, especially with the altcoins really starting to lag and just making note of that. So those are really the levels to be watching. On the downside, clear support has been established here over the last couple of days. And so if we break below this 53.80 level, that's going to really be a good signal that, hey, maybe this is starting to roll over. Ultimately, 5,200 is that strong support area that I've been watching here. A break below 5,200 will not be pretty. And so that's really the level to be watching on the way down. That's going to be a strong level of support. And that's really, we've seen higher lows since then, since this breakout over that 5,200 level, and reversing below that would really confirm that that was likely a pretty good top, and we could see the trend begin to change at that point. So until then, got to give the daily time frame the benefit of the doubt. The bulls remain in control. We're still edging higher. There is some signs that momentum is losing its steam, but from a price perspective, it's anyone's guess where it finally decides to pause. The other thing I want to make note of, I don't have highlighted here on the chart. Everyone's talking about the golden cross where the 50-day crosses over the 200-day. And as we saw last year with the death cross and everybody was making a big deal about it, you saw a lot of that here in the last week, people making a big deal about this golden cross. And just so you guys know where I stand on that, it is a positive thing from a longer term point of view, right? It is just one more checkbox that is being filled out in favor of the bulls that signals, hey, potentially the end of the bear market. But from a day-to-day trading decision perspective, the golden cross is just much too late of an indicator. It's a very much a lagging indicator to really be useful for making any sort of decisions from a day-to-day trading perspective. And that's just my opinion, right? So and what I mean by that is, if you were waiting for the golden cross to happen before you decide to start stepping into the market, I mean, you've already missed the bulk of the move at that point, and it's not unusual to expect maybe a little bit of a retracement, a little bit of a pullback after such a strong move. And we're just now getting the golden cross. And that's because the two moving averages that people use for that are very long-term moving average, the 50 and the 200. And so they take a while to turn. They're slower moving, they're lagging. But like I said, it is positive, right? If price is trading above the 200-day, that's good. If it's trading above the 50-day, that's good. If the 50-day is above the 200-day, even better, right? And so just want to make note of that. Now, as I mentioned a few videos ago, what I do use in a similar way, not for trading decisions, but more for confirmation, I do use the 10 and the 22 EMA crossover on the weekly time frame, and we had that crossover last week, right? That was the official crossover, but it was kind of coming, right? We saw the 10 EMA crossing over, the 22 had already started to turn, and we saw that official crossover, and that was the first time that the 10 EMA has been positive relative to the 22 EMA since March of 2018. And of course, waiting until that point to confirm that we were turning into a bear market was much too late. We had already dropped, 60-70% at that point. But again, use them as confirmation, and we hadn't seen those crossover until just last week, which is very positive again, but still below long-term resistance around that 6K mark. And until we start closing above 6,300, you got to remain cautious for a potential pullback and a retracement. But this is looking positive from a long-term picture, the turning of the corner. Is it the end of the bear market? As I have often said, we won't know until retrospect, and we can look back several months later and say, yep, that was the low. But at that point, prices are probably already up 50-60% from the lows, as is usually the case. We saw the same thing happen at the end of the last bear market, where we had a crossover. As I mentioned before, we had a crossover here in July of 2015. Prices pushed higher, then they had one more pullback before rising higher. The last crossover was October of 2015, and the moving averages never looked back, remained positively correlated, as I said, up until this last crossover here last year in March of 18. So just something to make note of. Those are my thoughts on this whole golden cross. Where do we stand? What's going to happen? It's positive, but from a day-to-day decision-making perspective, I generally just don't use it. I use shorter time frames. I'm looking at 4-hour views, generally daily views to help, that sort of thing, especially if I'm doing more active trading. This shorter time frame is generally where I'm looking for my setups. So just something to make note of here. Now looking at some of the laggards, Ethereum BTC here has continued to drop versus Bitcoin. I was talking about a potential double bottom forming here a few days ago, but as I mentioned, I wasn't going to do anything until prices got back above this resistance around 3,400, and they just never were able to. They had that one-day pump, no follow through, and just has been rolling over versus Bitcoin here over the last few days. And that's unfortunate because the USD pair was shaping up nicely, potentially setting up to break out. Now it's still holding above the prior breakout point, which was around 157. So definitely watching this pair. A breakout on this pair could signal a reversal on the BTC side, but until prices can push through some of this resistance, and ideally that's really around 177, then I'm just going to be patient and wait for things to confirm that they're ready to turn the corner. Not going to jump the gun on any of these. XRP, looking at this one here, big laggard. Now it's certainly getting very oversold, but just continues to lag. You see these, one-day little pump attempts off the bottom, but really there is no strength here from the buying side. Now it is starting to go a little parabolic to the downside. RSI here on the daily is hitting the teens. Historically, some oversold conditions, but in terms of looking for a low, I'm not necessarily going to try to catch a falling knife on this guy. We cover this one a lot during the live streams, and we're always looking at it, and really my story has been the same. Until it turns the corner, just not going to be something that I want to look at. Now, could make for a nice little oversold bounce here versus Bitcoin, but until that happens, I'm just going to look for other things. There's just much better setups and stronger names to be looking at versus XRP, right, and BTC here. So looking at Litecoin here, Litecoin BTC, and I'm just going to hit some of the majors here. Litecoin BTC, again, same story since the early part of April, just really starting to lag here, pulling right back to this prior breakout point here on the BTC pair. We saw a nice reversal spike yesterday from that point, but we'll see if it holds. It's still below the 10 EMA on the daily. The 10 EMA has crossed over, trending lower versus the 22, and so right now the daily trend certainly continues to be downward. We'll see if this little area around here serves as an area of support. Looking at BCH BTC, I'll go to the Coinbase pair on that. Again, this one had that one-day pump when Bitcoin Cash SV was delisted. We saw a spike. It pulled back. I thought maybe we'd get one more spike higher, follow through to the upside. Nothing happened, just continued to roll over. If we look at it from the USD side, it was also trying to break out of a symmetrical pattern, but has not been able to do so. That's what I was watching here at the start of this week, looking for a break above the line. Wasn't gonna jump the gun here. Did try on that little BTC pump a few days ago, but has since broken lower again. Still holding above support around that 260 level, but I'm gonna wait for some upside confirmation before I do anything with this guy. Above 320, then I'm looking for a retest of that 350 level, and then ultimately getting close to that 400, so upper 300s. That's a big if it can break out to the upside. Right now, the charts are not looking that way, and so I'm not going to jump the gun on any of these names here. One more, or two more actually. We'll do Cardano here. I'll look at Cardano BTC. This one again, look at where it hit right to the resistance point here and just continues to pull back, fully retracing right back to this breakout point, major resistance level that it cleared here before I had that pretty strong run up here at the midpoint of March. Big base that it broke out of, fully retracing. So definitely one I'm watching right here as it's pulled right back into some long time prior resistance. Now should be support. We'll see how it acts here. Ideally, what I'd like to see on moves like this is support comes in, the buyers step in, it pops a little bit, maybe it pulls back, retests the line, and then it starts to go again. That's what I'm going to be looking for. I just generally don't expect a V bottom. It hits support and then it's just like off to the races and makes new highs. It could. That's just usually not the way it works. You'll see some backfilling and some retesting. And as I said, the big question is always what happens when Bitcoin decides to finally take a breather, or if it starts to turn the corner and starts to trend lower for a few weeks. Do the alts just sit tight, or do they take an even bigger hit than what we're seeing right now, right? And that's a big question. And generally speaking, the alts will continue lower if Bitcoin takes a pretty good hit, but they will often find a bottom first and signal a potential low coming for Bitcoin. And so you may see the alts start to pop off the lows when that starts to happen, but for now, just going to take it slow, not going to press, not going to over trade this market, and just, be patient and wait for the better setups to start showing up before doing anything. One more that I want to point out is EOS. We'll look at EOS USD. Now, this is another one that's pulled right back to a important support level here, or pulling right back to an important support level. And again, this was resistance around that 440 level on the USD tether pair. Bounce, broke out from this, had a nice run to about 580, 590, and then it just hasn't been able to follow through. Now it's starting to roll over. But what I'm watching is, can it find some support here, find a little bit of a bounce action similar to Cardano, and then maybe start to push higher. If we look at it from the US or the BTC pair, EOS BTC, so many letters, you can see again just dropping off pretty steeply here over the last several days, and many alts look this way. I did a quick scan of so many of the names on my watch list: Neo, Ontology, Cardano, EOS. I mean, just going down the list, big cap, small cap, mid cap, and they all have kind of this rolling over look to them versus Bitcoin as the BTC dominance continues to run. So just be patient, gonna wait it out, gonna keep an eye on the alerts and the watch list. As you can see here, this is the automated watch list that we have on nodeinsiders.com, and there's just not a lot of depth to it right now. Tron's hitting the watch list, Vive, MCO, on Bittrex, a handful of very small cap, usually illiquid names that I just generally don't have interest in trading. And so just not a lot of depth to the watch list right now, which is another sign of what's going on. If you look at BTC, however, again, the daily picture remains strong. It's still signaling bullish as 4-hour and daily picture view are in the green. And so until we get a clear signal one way or the other, just going to be patient and wait it out. So I hope this helps, guys. Thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate you guys keeping up with the channel and looking at the updates as I post them. We'll see how things turn out here over the next day or so, but we will be here, and I'll look for making another update once we get a little bit more of a significant move one way or the other. So thanks for watching. Hope you have a good rest of your day, good weekend if I don't post a new video by then. Till next time, take care, everyone.